Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Sean the Sign Guy, and this is the project that I am working on today. Well, it'll take me a few days to get this one done. This is a 24-inch by 36-inch, half-inch MDO painted plywood sign. The thing that makes this interesting is if you can see where it says cut out, that actually will be cut out. It's a little different. We're trying to duplicate an original sign that was, I think the customer said it was up for about 15-20 years. So I need to go over to the cutter and get everything, get my template ready to cut so I can get it over on the half-inch MDO plywood. So stick with me and we're going to do this one step by step. Okay, so here is the template that I'm actually going to try to cut. That I'm going to try to cut out of vinyl. I prefer to cut this out of vinyl instead of a paper pattern, just for the simple fact that I can retain a lot more of this detail in here. So you can see where the white area will be cut out. The black is actually going to be part of the tree, and then my normal template or my actual template where this would be a normal template. So next thing I got to do is load in some 631 or just some cheap vinyl and get my template, and then I'm going to go ahead and get it over on the MDO, pencil my lines, and get to cutting. Okay, so unfortunately my 24-inch roll of Orcal 631 is only 23 5/8 inches wide, and as you can see I actually need almost 23 3/4 inches of material in order to cut this piece. So I have to load in 50-inch wide Orcal 651, which I don't like doing, but again, I'd rather have an adhesive template instead of using my my paper and drawing a pattern, just because that's not as accurate as what that is going to be. So this is all loaded, ready to go. Let me pull the size. Good cut. Now the one thing that I'm going to point out, because this is a double-sided sign, the tree only goes one way. Now I actually had to really talk the customer into going with something like this instead of a more typical apple tree looking piece of clip art, because it's just impossible to cut. If I could cut this on the CNC, I probably wouldn't worry so much about it, but because I'm actually going to freehand cut all this with the jigsaw, and I'm going to use one of them, so I don't remember, like rotozip tool to cut the inside of that out. So one side's going to look like this and the other side is going to look like that. That's basically the only difference between the two. The design aspect of it really won't make that much of a difference, but I have my template cut. Let me go ahead and get this cut off the rest of the roll of the vinyl and get it weighted and get it over to the piece of MDO. All right, so I've got my template ready. I got some handy tools here. I got a squeegee, got some blue painter's tape, and I got a ballpoint ink pen, and that's what I'm going to do to trace this out. First thing I got to do is get this piece transferred onto the piece of wood, and this one does not have to be perfectly centered because it looks like everything is going to get cut out. Tell you, these 6-inch squeegees, they make quick work of this crap. Make sure that it's stuck where it's supposed to stick. Alright, so now that I've got this down, I'm just going to take my ballpoint pen. I'm just going to trace, basically. So I'm cutting these by hand. And I don't like to use felt tip on these because the felt actually bleeds. and it doesn't make as crisp of a line as opposed to using the ballpoint pen. All right, so that part is that. Next step is getting all the power tools out. I'm probably gonna cut them. All right, so let me zoom in on here. So I got the board cut because I had to cut the other two down, and I had to cut another piece too. So ran into a little bit of a problem. So I could not find my skill router. I have no idea what happened to it, and it's probably been 2.5 years since I remember seeing it when we moved. So thought about cutting it out with a jigsaw, but I'm like, that would take forever and it'd probably look like crap. So what I have is the router from the CNC. Essentially, it's the same thing. It's a DeWalt router, Makita router, carbide router. They're all just little, what do they have, horsepower, if that, whatever router. So I remember I had the rest of the attachments, so that's what I ended up doing. I just ended up putting the base and everything on there, making sure that it's all set. This is actually the router bit that I use in the CNC. So it should go through. It should go through the MDO. I don't know. I never tried it like this, so screw it. I'm just gonna see what happens. Crap. So I can tell you that this is not the ideal blade. Number one, these blades are made to cut about 1/8 of an inch to a 1/2 inch, depending on the density of the material at a time. I'm trying to cut through this 1/2 inch material in one shot. So the top of this, I guess the top of the flue is kind of burning the wood, and it's kind of a pain in the butt getting through this, but I don't know any other way that I'm going to be able to do this because I cannot find any other blade. So it's just going to be slow and painful. It's cutting all the way through, but it's definitely tearing the vinyl up there. But that's why I outlined, that's why I put the pen line on there, just in case the vinyl rips up. So I'm just gonna forge on, use the jigsaw for the rest of the stuff, and when I get into there, I'll go ahead and I'll get the camera back on. Okay, sorry, I didn't realize that my camera had shut off. So I got the template cut. That was a pain. Just these intricate pieces in here, and trying to get around with the jigsaw, but I can sand those out, finish all that stuff. For the most part, it's not too bad. Got a little wonky right there. But so for this piece, I plan on using the jigsaw probably from this point all the way down over, and I'm going to try to get over probably back into that area before I switch over to the router. So hopefully the battery lasts, and I'm going to go ahead and just drill a hole and start doing this now. That'll make it a little easier. As far as that one's going to go. Okay, so after I broke the bit in my potty mouth, I'm going to finish cutting this out and go on to the next stage. Apparently this is going to need a lot of cleanup, a lot of sanding, but that's okay. That's kind of the nature of the beast. Here we go. Woo! All right. Yeah, it's still pretty tough. Good stuff. Okay, now that I got shape and everything cut, now it's time to pull off this crack it on. Okay, so you can see, like I said, this is all really rough and through here. All of this needs to be sanded so I can prime. All the edges need to be primed. Yeah, I got some work ahead of me, but for the most part it turned out okay. So the next part is getting all these little details sanded, finished, and then primed. Once it's primed, then we're going to go ahead and paint. All right, here's another. So when you're cutting out with a jigsaw, you know, it's really hard to get a lot of those real tight details. And sometimes they don't always turn out perfect. So when I was taking the jigsaw and I was actually cutting up this way, I hit this point, and this is actually supposed to be rounded a little bit. So I'll show you over here on this side. So it's supposed to have a little bump out right there. But of course I didn't cut it exactly right, and that's the downfall to the jigsaw. And the same thing with this little piece here. So this is it's hard to see because you can see where I actually burned the wood going around it so tight. But I just take my sanding block and some sandpaper and you know, just file that down and just smooth it as much as you possibly can, because mistakes happen. But you know, this is just stuff that we kind of work with and work through it. So I'll take with this little block sander here, and I'm just gonna round out that choppiness there. And this is just a little 1x2 that I just wrapped some sandpaper around. Like I said, it works really well for getting in other angles and whatnot, but that's pretty much what you got to do. And you just continue to shape it as need be. I need to get in there. So I have another little piece here. So this is basically, it's about a 3/8 inch dowel, and it has some sandpaper wrapped around it as well. So I take it, and it's got a finer grit on it, but I can still sand through and take those burrs off. And I know some people are probably watching this say you never sand across the grain. The problem is that you can't sand anything this way, and that's the beauty of the MDO, is that the way that these panels are formed and bonded, like I said, generally you can get away with it. Sometimes you chip this outer layer when you sand up, but for the most part, all the layers are really bonded very well together, so you can get away sanding this way. So, and again, once you get some paint on it, they'll never know. So this sandpaper is 80 grit. It's probably a little bit too aggressive to get these edges. I think this is more like 180, which is what I like to use to round all the corners off. And just so you know that anytime that you're painting anything, you always want to give that corner, that edge, a little bit of a, you want to knock it off so it's got a little bit of curve to it. You don't want a perfect 90, because the paint never sticks to that hard 90. When you curve it, lay it over a little bit, then the paint has something to grab a hold of. Less likely that something's gonna fail down the road. Okay, so do a little bit of final sanding here,
And now we get to priming. I prefer to dab the primer on just because it seems to get into the pores of the wood a lot better. And then I'll just wipe off any excess that gets on the top or bottom of the sign. You don't want it covering the edge because you're just going to have to go back and sand that back off. So this is going around the sign. I got some little pit holes I need to fill in there. Again, dabbing on the primer really thick the first coat, and then I'll just clean off the edges really quick. And I prefer to use a foam brush just because it gives me a little bit better control, and it gives me better control than a bristle brush. A bristle brush just seems to get the primer all over the place. Although you can get it on pretty thick, it just works better as seen right there. Like I said, I just kind of like knock off the excess. But the thicker the primer, the better that it's going to be. Kind of gets down in the nooks and crannies and whatnot. So dabbing it, and then if you get any like super extra stuff, you can always go back and sand that off. But I've never had a problem with having not enough primer. It's always been better having a little bit more than a little bit less. Definitely takes the paint a lot better. And kind of rounding out the primer stage, just about got everything done. You can see I had to use some toothpicks and some popsicle sticks to get in some of those nooks and crannies.
Primed. The one little area that I ran into that's a problem is this piece. So there was a void in one of the layers of the MDO, and I've run across this several times, and what I used to do was just pack it full of the plastic wood filler, but the problem was that the stuff just took forever for it to evaporate before I could actually prime over it. If the inside of the plastic filler was not dry by the time I put another coat of primer over this and then painted over it, what happened was that area just remained sticky until the inside outgassed, and then the paint eventually dried. And it generally takes about 2 extra days. So what I ended up doing is, fix my camera here, is this is a piece of HDU. It's high density urethane. This is 2 inch thick. This is just a little piece of, let's see if it focuses there. It's going to focus on my hand. So it's about a 1/16 of an inch, give or take a little bit. And so what I do is I put this in there, and then I take a razor blade and I just go ahead and I cut it off. So I'm going to try to do that now. Sometimes you need to sliver a little bit more just to kind of get it going. My sliver, I just take my blade and cut off a little bit here just to make sure that I can get it started. That whittling there. And generally I can kind of get in there pretty close. So once I have it at that point, then what I like to do, actually it's not very tight. So I am going to try to whittle this side. Whittle that side a little bit. See if I can't, there we go. It's just a tighter fit, and it just fits in there a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is I just take the blade and just very carefully trim along that edge and then just kind of break it off. From here you can either take some sandpaper and get it really close, but you can see the void is very minimal, and so I'll just take some plastic wood filler after this is crammed in there, and the wood filler will kind of backfill, and then I'm going to sand and prime this again, and it'll never fail. It'll be fine for the life of the sign. Should never have a problem. I've got another little spot on the back side I have to do the same thing to. So from here I'm going to show you how I fill it, and then I'm going to prime back over it. Okay, and I'm back. So these are my other 2 little spots, and taking the same piece here, and the only thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut like a V shaped type piece there. Let's see if we can't get it jammed in there. I'll have to cut some of this off. Try Trying to do this so y'all can see what I'm doing too. And this one isn't very deep, but it, let's try to do it this way. Trying to keep my fingers out of the way so y'all can see what I'm doing too. So just try to shimmy it in there. It's about as far as it's going to go. You can see, hopefully that focuses really nice. So I've got that. Wiggle it just a little bit more. Take my blade and trim that as well. Now this little piece here is going to have to be, get my camera so I can see what I'm doing here. I'm going to make this more of a point, see, like that, so I can get in here. Now, because this is the actual layer of the MDO, I don't think that's actually the wood that has the void, so I'm just going to cram that back in there as well, as far back as I can get it, and trim that off. So this is actually what I'm using again. So this is the DAP plastic wood. Color doesn't matter. This is natural, yeah, color doesn't matter to me. I would rather have something lighter than darker, personally, just because it covers up a little bit better. So I'm going to pop this can open. Stuff is already mixed up, so I'll just take a little, it's about a popsicle stick, like so you can get craft sticks from anywhere, Walmart or whatever, and I just get another, or a little, I just get a little bit there on the end. It's kind of like peanut butter. Just kind of like mash it into all that. And I always put a little bit more than what's needed. Sometimes the popsicle sticks work good, and sometimes they just become a freaking pain. Sometimes it's easier using your fingers, but I don't like getting the stuff on my fingers. Yeah, that looks pretty rough. Let's do that. There we go. A little bit more right there. Just want to make sure that all the green is covered up, and then the rest of it I can kind of sand out. But there we go. Mix this up. Stuff is like a peanut butter consistency, but anytime that the air gets to it, it dries like super fast. So this, and essentially, like I said, all this is doing is just kind of filling in around the edges from when I shoved that HDU in there. The only thing we have to do is let it dry. Once it's dry, sand it, and then once I sand that, I'm just going to sand. Once I sand that, I'm just going to sand actually the whole perimeter of the sign. And then I'm actually going to reprime those areas, and it should be good to go, ready to paint. Okay, so now I got the this is more than dry. I'm going to go ahead and sand all this stuff. Once I sand it, again, I'll go back in and I'll reprime these areas that have this this filler on, and I'm just going to use I think this is 220, something like that. 220, I think that's what it says. 222. It's not 22. It's, so yeah, sand it, and then we can actually get to painting some stuff. Knock the hard stuff off first, and I'm just using the 220 just to knock off any of the fibers that stick up. That's primarily the big reason why. Well, you prime. There's two reasons to prime. So number one is obviously to seal the wood surface, to make sure that you paint on it, that the paint doesn't get sucked into the wood. The primer actually sits on top, and then the paint, it just has a more even overall coverage when you paint it. The second reason is when you cut some of this wood, sometimes the grain goes in different directions, and when you apply primer, and obviously because the primer has moisture in it, it wicks some of the fibers, and it actually makes them stand up, like you can't really see it, but like right in here. So it like wicks those fibers up, so when you sand, it'll actually sand everything nice and smooth. Again, so you don't have any rough edges when you actually go to paint. And because I use foam brushes, If you had those fibers sticking up and you have a foam edge going across, that is just going to mar that. It's just going to mar the foam. So there you go. So that's the reasons for the priming. Makes a nice smooth edge as well. And of course, the smoother the edge, the better the paint's going to turn out. Afraid of, because I have these screws here and I keep pressing down on this side, and I don't want to create any more problems than I have to. So and when you're sanding, you don't want to sand all the primer back down. You just want to knock any of the fibers that had stood up and just knock them down smooth as you can get them. Again, the best way to do that is just feel them with your fingers. Your fingers and your hands pretty much tell you when it's nice and smooth, when it's ready to go. Now the fun part. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is, because you can see that the tree itself is actually black, so those edges had to be black. There's little white areas here that I'm actually just going to use some die cut vinyl right here for the arms of the trees, I guess. So all of this area inside here actually gets painted black, so I'm going to do that first. Then I'm actually going to paint the tree black while I still have it in my hand, and then I'm just going to mask off these areas. The rest of it's going to get painted white when I'm done painting the black area. So that's the first thing that I got to do, and I'm going to get started. So the brush that I'm using is just one of these cheap little hobby brushes. It's got the longer hairs on it and it's really soft. And I figured that the softness would let me push up here into the nooks and crannies where I actually need to get the paint, because I can't technically brush it on. It actually just has to be like slobbed in there, I guess, if that's a word, slob. And I'm probably going to have to turn this over so I can get the other side as well. I can only get so far so far into the nooks and crannies there with this brush. So, but I want to get a nice thick coat on these, on this edge the first time, so I don't have to go back and repaint if I missed an area. So I'm going to paint as much as I can on this side, and then I will flip the sign over and make sure that I got all the spots on the other side as well. So far this isn't too bad. It's just, I know this is tedious. Yeah, that stuff just got smudged in there. I just kind of smeared it around and really screwed up my brush there. But again, I'm just blobbing the paint here and trying to make one thick, heavy coat to make sure that I get it all covered the first time here. And this brush isn't really the best for brushing, but I think it'll do. Okay, so we've got it all painted, all the inside nooks and crannies there. We're going to let this sit overnight. Tomorrow I'll come back and I will paint the rest of it white. So on to step 3492. All right guys, welcome back. So this is day 3, I believe. So the last clip I ended up painting the inside or the outside of the tree per se. And what I've decided is because the way this is designed, so this is a black outlined. I think I'm going to do that in vinyl. I'm going to paint the tree with the black one shot, so that's what I'm going to do now. I've got some tape marked off here, and I've got some tape marked off here. It'll give it a little bit of different contrast, but I can't lay vinyl over top of this and then go back in and try to fill all that, because it'll end up pulling up. It'll probably look like crap. So, and I thought about painting this line around the shape, but then it won't match the rest of the black finish for the lettering and these little accents in the border. So I figured this is the best way to go about doing it. Is it right? Is it wrong? I don't know. I'm just trying to think through this, and this is the first time that I've done something like this. So kind of experimenting. Through my experience, this is probably going to work out okay. So I'm just going to put a thin coat of black one shot. I'm not going to slap it on there. I'm just going to do enough to cover the white, and I don't want it super thick because it creates a different sheen. And so that's what I'm going to do now. I think I'm just going to get my can of one shot, and I'm going to take the brush, and I'm going to kind of go around and get some of the edges so it doesn't really bleed too much under here. And then I'm going to roll the rest of it just to kind of flatten the paint out, knock off any bubbles that that may occur. Flip this over, kind of do the same thing on the other side, where I'll tape it off so I don't like run a bunch of paint, because the paint is so much thicker when you put the vinyl over top of it that you'll see that brush or that variant where I stop painting and where the vinyl covers that. It's kind of like a wrap, you know. That's why you got to take everything off. So get some of this off, and I'm just going to kind of dab over here just to make sure that I don't get too much paint and bleed through over there. That's kind of the point of no return there. So I just want to get this all covered. Well, maybe I'll brush this instead of rolling it, so it should still be okay as long as I get enough paint on there. And essentially, I'm just using the dab method here because it kind of wrings out all of the additional paint from the foam that sucks it up. And again, when you're using this technique that I'm using to like dab the paint out, you definitely want to make sure that you spread it evenly so that the sheen comes out the same throughout the whole piece. That's why I'm back brushing. And it's kind of warm in here today. That's why you can hear the squeak of the paint. It's it doesn't take long for it to start drying. Again, this is one of those jobs I wasn't really sure what I was getting into. If I did it again, I would definitely charge a little bit more money. Just because the amount of time that it takes to cut that piece and the extra painting that's involved in separating all this. But again, I've never done one, so this is a learning experience for me. The little piece that I missed there, so let's blob some paint in there. I think the rest of it looks good, because once I do this, I really don't want to go back and have to paint that inside, because the next part is going to be painting the white of the sign. Oh, there's another little piece. Here we go. Now take and flip. That was a mess. I'm just using regular blue painter's tape. Nothing special, nothing spectacular about it. Fun when you get to do new projects like this, but at the same time, it always leaves the question of, am I doing this right, or is there a better way to do it? Saturate it, kind of wring a little bit out there, start back here, and then get all that so it doesn't bleed underneath the tape too bad. I'm always afraid of picking up too much paint when I dab, because it's kind of like an optical illusion when you get your brush down in there and you don't really know how far down into the can that you're actually going. So I don't want to pick up more paint than I have to, because as many of you know, with the issues that Matthews and One Shot is having getting supplies. And I'm trying to conserve as much One Shot as I can to hopefully they get their issues straightened out. I've got some Ronin enamel that I got from Blue Ridge Sign Supply, and I just got it because they had it in the event that I have to do some more painting. So that's that. It'll work. So I'm going to pull the paint or the tape off, and I pull the tape off when it's damp or when the paint is still wet, because I'm afraid if the paint dries on the tape and you try to pull it off, I don't want it ripping anything. It shouldn't have a problem bonding to the MDO, but I just don't like to take that chance. So I take the tape off when the paint's still wet. All right, so that part is done. Like I said, when this part is done drying, like I said, it'll come back and I'll actually paint the rest of the sign white. So all we can do is sit around and wait, or through the magic of camera. All right, guys, so now we're back with day 4 or 5, I don't know, 6,472. The paint is dry for the tree, all of that, and as you can see, I've gone back and taped a little bit of it off because I know as I roll, the last thing I want to do is hit one of those pieces and apply white paint to the dry painted areas. So today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint both sides. Both sides are actually going to be white, and today I'm using the Ronin one stroke lettering enamel. And go up and so you can see that, because apparently One Shot is still having raw material issues, and trying to get One Shot is a pain. So this is my only other alternative, because I don't have enough white One Shot to do this sign. So I did a video in the past with Ronin. Apparently that was bulletin color. I got it wrong. I'm not right. I don't know. I'm just kind of, trying to find, other solutions and using different types of paints. But so I'm using the Ronin today on this sign. So I got my roller ready, and I'm just going to pour some paint out and start painting some edges, and then we're going to flip it over and hopefully let this one dry for a day or two. My initial thought process is this seems a little thicker. Not sure here. Maybe it's thinner, I'm not sure. And again, I want to start this stuff out with a nice thick coat. Nice. Again, my problem with Ronin last time was the coverage was not as good as One Shot. That was my, even on the bulletin color, but we'll see what happens with all this here. Just need to get this stuff spread out as much as I possibly can. I just don't think that it covers as well as One Shot, personally. I can already tell you, I'm not, well, the coverage looks okay. So let's put a little more through there. I know it's so technical when I do that, isn't it? So it's looking like this is not going to be One Shot. So I don't think I'm going to be able to cover up my black from the One Shot up here in these areas. Looks like that's going to take at least 2. Wonderful. Don't do what I just did. Just tape the whole thing because I got splatter on it. Save yourself the heartache. Just tape over the whole thing. See, this is why I do this for you guys. Learn from my mistakes. And like every other painter should probably already know, paint your lighter colors first and your darker colors last. That doesn't look too bad. Yeah, it flattened out pretty good. I mean, it's nice and smooth. It's starting to kind of settle down a little bit. Doesn't look bad. I can still see some black in that area there. So let me get the can. Now I got to go and get the edges. I have no idea how I'm going to flip this. So, take my little 1-inch brush here and go in and dab in and try to get, there's a little nooks and crannies in here. So I will say, I mean, it covers pretty good. Let me say now, looking at it, it's acceptable. I don't know, like I said, there's still a dark area right there. I'm gonna let it kind of flash sit for a little bit and see if I can't get some more paint on there without it lifting. Because I think that's gonna be, the other issue is if I paint too much, I don't want anything to lift. Okay, so hopefully got a newer hoodie on. Pray to God I don't get any freaking paint on it, because I don't really have anywhere to hold the sign where I normally would. So Hail Mary, and well, this just might work. Yo. Okay. Paint some of this black area here, because I think that it'll help hide. And I think at this point it's inevitable that I'm going to have to go back in and touch up a lot of I'm going to have to touch up a lot of that black, if not recoat some of it. So okay, side number 2. Try to okay, so now it's painted white. I know I got a lot of touch-ups to do, but now sit, wait, and let it dry. All right, so here's another little tip for you. So as you've seen, I like to pour my paint directly out of the can. And what that does is when you dump the paint out, it'll actually collect here in this little gutter here, as I'm kind of pointing out there. I guess you can kind of see it. I don't want to tilt it too far. So what I do to make the paint go back down into the can, and so it does not dry and collect in that lip, is take a nail. I guess that's a 10 penny, 12 penny. I don't know what it is. Just a standard nail. And what I do is I poke holes in the lip there. Put one there, put a couple. I'll probably put about 6 or 7. The more you put in there, the more paint can escape back down to where it belongs, instead of in that gutter. That'll help you out too. Pretty simple old school trick. Like I said, you don't need a lot of them. You just need enough to where the paint can actually flow back down into the canister without drying out. So hopefully that's it's another quick tip for you. Hopefully it helped you guys out. All right, so I finally got all the painting done, at least I hope. I'm gonna flip over here. So here's the sign. I've done all my touch-ups. I got the screw tips where the sign was resting on. I got all this stuff kind of filled out, and again, I'm going to spare you the boring part of having everything cut because I already did it. So essentially this big black piece is just going to go right over top here, and I'm actually going to trim it back about a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch, and I'm just going to tuck it down on both sides, and that way it should protect everything pretty good. So I have this piece is already weighted, and there's the second piece, there's the light gray, and then there's a little scraggler of some white. There it is, to get all this kind of finished out. So I've got to finish weeding all this, and once I'm done weeding, then I'll go ahead and apply it to the sign. We'll see how it looks. So I hope this one's done soon. Okay, so now that I've got the rest of my vinyl weeded, I've got the main black pieces. I've got the the light gray drop shadows that go on the letters. Those are actually masked with this is the medium tack R tape AT60, and I've got some other little scragglers. These are little white areas, and they actually go on the tree because we really didn't want to cut the tree portion out. They actually go right there because I didn't want to cut all this out because it makes it very flimsy, and the more pieces that we have holding it together, the better off that it is. Got the sign down, got the first piece of vinyl here. I don't know what I was thinking when I did this. So as you saw in the previous scene, the tree behind this is painted black, and I wanted to just do an outline around that edge. Now the wood stops about right here. I can feel it there with my finger, but once I apply this, it actually applies to the tree as well. So I don't know what I was thinking. I'm just going to have to roll with it. Hopefully once I apply it, I'm just going to trim some of the vinyl back, or actually cut it out, because I don't want vinyl on the tree, because I know that I can't really trim it to the edge. That's not really what I was thinking, but I just got to kind of improvise here and kind of go with it. I've got this sitting on my light table because what this does is this helps me get everything lined up. I don't know if you can kind of see that. So you can see the light shining through, and so this is the edge of the sign. So I use that to kind of get everything lined up to make sure that it's all centered. Down here on the other side too. So I know there's some light over top of me, but I could turn this light off, but so there you can see it. And it's easier. I generally turn the lights off when I do this. Actually, let me show you how well it shows up. Bam. Okay. See, this is what I'm talking about here. So you can see the outline of the sign, and I can see my black vinyl, and I can gauge all that stuff. So, and lights on. So I've got my masking tape in place. And I'm just going to go ahead and get this applied. I'm probably going to switch over so that way you can see how I actually go about doing this. And if you're watching and you want to try this technique, it works great. The heavier the liner, as long as it's a paper liner, the easier that it works. all you have to do is, so with your tape at this hinge point, take my 2 fingers and you just want to tear it down and away. You want to make sure that you tear it down because the silicone is on top. If you tear it up, then you'll expose the paper fibers. Tearing it down will leave the silicone up top and pushes the paper back down, so that way you don't have any fibers when you go to tear it. So if I take my hand and I just make that point right there, and I can kind of steer it by where I'm grabbing it on the paper. And that's pretty simple. Let me get this started. Not exactly sure how this is going to work because I want the paper to bow, but there we go. And anytime that I'm working on painted surfaces or ACM, like I said, I like to use these felt squeegees because when you squeegee across, it won't scratch the substrate. So run my finger around here and make sure that that's pretty close, because I want that to definitely stay down. And like I said, I'll come back in and I think I'm going to trim and cut that out, but let me get this side. Start where I can get that crease out. And I'm not putting a lot of pressure down initially. I'm just enough to keep the paper taut so that the vinyl lays down, and then I'll apply some pressure when I go back to it. And I'm actually going to use a thicker squeegee. The only problem with these Avery squeegees is that they bend really, really easy. This Geek Wraps, this thing is very rigid. And so I prefer these when I'm putting cut vinyl down because it allows me to put a lot of pressure on the vinyl. Mark. Just using a regular ballpoint pen until I get to that point. Okay, and again, I'm just going to trim out ways away from that edge because I just want to fold that extra material in. I think it's definitely easier to trim with the application tape on. Okay. Now you can see why I overpainted the edges a little bit. Like I said, I didn't paint all the way to the edge on the white. Because this tree is not symmetrical, like I said, I had to flip it, and as you can't see that. So you can kind of see it through the light table. So this is the area that I need to apply. So I just need to make sure that I have the right one and it's going the right direction. I didn't really pattern this out. I'm just going to kind of see how it kind of falls, I guess. I know kind of about where it needs to be, but that's why I put it on the clear, because I'm just going to take a shot in the dark. This ain't going to be perfect, but it'll be close. And again, we did this because we were afraid cutting out all that material would make these pieces very, very fragile, I guess. what I am going to do to make this easier on myself is I'm going to break this into two pieces. Essentially, I can see where this is going to go. And I know that you all can't see that up there, but I can see through the clear application tape that that black is dark enough that it just barely shows through that paper. And what I'm looking for is even spacing between the shadow and the edge of the letter on both sides, top, bottom, left, and right. And when it comes to like when there's shadows in between the letter, like this L, it's always broken in equal increments. So when the shadow lays down, it's easy just to split the difference, line this up between the two pieces of the letter. So that's the back of the E and the foot of the L. So kind of start there to get an idea with how much spacing that you need on everything. And it typically lines up pretty dang close. So I'm gonna leave the application tape on there for now, because what it's gonna do, it's gonna help me line up. It should line up about perfectly with the rest of the letters. So I'm really gonna try to zoom in on here so you all can see what I'm talking about. So you can see the letter behind there. So what I'm talking about is when you find, say like, freaking light would work. So the shadow, when it's made the shadow, it will when I do the offset, it's offset of this letter, but it will never hit that letter. So the offset's going to be the same. So you can see where I start is the shadow in between both of those pieces, and then I look at the distance between the shadow and the foot of the letter, and I line that up accordingly with the rest of it. And you can also do that like on the A. There's equal spacing down here, up there, up there. So that's what I was talking about with that. Beautiful. Last thing to do is flip this over, do the second side. All right guys, welcome back. I think this is the last step on this project. So the customer requested eyelets on this sign, and of course, as you know me, I don't recommend sign or I don't recommend eye hooks. I like using these sign hangers. You can get them at Blue Ridge Sign Supply. I think Super SO, I'll put the link down in the description. I can't remember. But essentially I got these from BlueRidgeSignSupply.com if you're interested. These are the stainless steel ones. So these are scuffed with Scotch-Brite. Got some gray etching primer on it because they are stainless steel, and then I just have some Rust-Oleum semi-gloss black shot over top of them. So these will be installed on the sign. Okay, so the customer stated that they need these installed 19 inches apart. And so what I have to do is find basically the center line of the sign and then measure off of that. What is that? 9.5 inches to make 19 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you kind of where you get those center points at. So first thing I do is I try to find the symmetrical part of each part of the sign. Generally, you're not going to have one side goofier than the other, but sometimes it happens. So the first thing that I do is I take this part and I measure. That's 21 and an eighth. So I put my center line at about 10 and a half. I don't know what that 16th is. Sorry. And I'll go back down here and I'll do the same center point. And again, I'm not using my center point tape because that thing is butchered. But, so the next part, what I'll do is I'll take the outside of the sign. It's 23 and a half. And half of that is going to be basically 11 and 3/4. And so I place my mark there and there. And so once I get my marks and I'm pretty sure that I'm squared up and centered, I'm going to take my 19 inches and split the difference here, which is, we go 9 and a half, split it 9 and a half. And so you can see I have a mark here and I have a mark over here. And just to clarify that those are square within the sign, I'm going to take another measurement off the edge of the sign. It's 2 1/4. 2 1/4. So I measured correctly. So I know where these now need to go. So now the next part, if these are 2.5 inches, I'm going to take this blue painter's tape and I'm going to put it over the top because this is where I'm going to mark. And then, so this is where I'm going to drill my hole so it doesn't rip and tear and punch the wood out. So you just got regular blue painter's tape. And when you are drilling through this, essentially you just want some sort of backer board, and you can see this thing's about Swiss cheese because essentially it goes underneath of the sign, and you can put a piece of tape on the back side to make sure that it does not scratch as well, and this prevents blowout from the back of the from the sign. When you're applying pressure to the drill, you know, when you're applying pressure instead of the drill bit cutting, you're actually pressing down and it blows out the back of the sign, which you don't want to do that. So I'm going to get these marked again, drill my holes, install these, and then this one's finished, complete, ready to go. All right, so now that I have all this, sometimes what you want to do is spread these out a little bit so that they don't rub the sign. And again, so these brackets, you can see the angle of them. This is basically where I stop on the brackets, and that's about the edge of the sign. So that's, I'm stopping here. Just want to make sure that I get my center point, make sure that these are square. And I'm going to bend this one out a little bit. You don't want them too floppy, but just want them to be able to stay on there. 2 1/4. That's 2 1/2, so that one needs to go right about there. And so at this point, I just want to make sure that they are both the correct height. And this is going to be on the outside 1 3/4. So on this side, quarters. Just going to kind of eyeball them and make sure that they're all nice and square and everything. So that's where they're going to be. And the beauty of the blue tape is that now I can take an ballpoint pen where that one goes. Same thing with that one. So next thing we do is we drill the holes and finish the install. Okay, I want to thank you guys for tuning in again. Like I said, this is Sean the Sign Guy. This is just another everyday bread and butter kind of project that I got going on here. But appreciate you all watching, staying tuned. If you like the video, give give me a thumbs up. If you enjoy the content that I have here, consider subscribing. I would greatly appreciate it. And ding that notification button, like I said, that way you get notified when I upload new content. Thank y'all and have a great day.